Okay, so today is episode 5 of Talking Shop. Today we're talking about how to write music. We're talking about film scoring. So let's just jump right into it. First thing I have written down here is listen to film scores. I can't really emphasize enough how important it is to listen to film scores. New and old. Listen to, Eric Korngold. I can't think of any other composers at the moment, but, listen to Danny Elfman. The ones that I grew up on were Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman, John Powell, who else? Lauren Balfe. Hope I'm pronouncing that name right, but just like listen to as many people as you possibly can, especially the old composers. Maybe the next time I talk about film scoring, I'll have a list for you guys. But just listening to loads and loads of film scores will help give you context. And there's a lot of history in listening, and there's a lot of things that you can learn, especially when it comes to how film scores used to be versus how they are now, versus how, what they're turning into come the near future. So, just listening to a lot of different scores from a lot of different composers, from a lot of different movies, can give you a broader sense of the film scoring world. So listen every single day. I listen to film scores every single day. Literally every single day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't listen to at least one score. And if it is, it's every blue moon. It doesn't usually happen where I go an entire day without listening to at least one score. So yeah, just listen, and the reason that is because I genuinely enjoy listening to them. I'm not just forcing myself to listen to film scores every day. That would be terrible. I actually enjoy listening to film scores. When I was a kid and I was playing video games, I would be sitting in the main menu of the video game because I literally just love the music that I was hearing. I would literally just sit there. I wouldn't even play the game. I would just be experiencing the music right in front of the TV, sitting right in front of the TV. I can remember it like it was yesterday. Just listening to the main menu music over and over and over again. And so, I genuinely love listening to film scores. They I don't know, there's just a relatability that I get from them. So that's why it's easier for me to just listen to them every single day. So yeah, listen. All right, next one. This is probably going to be a quicker video. So we're going to go a little bit faster. But okay, so start with one line at a time. So a common issue that I would run into when I first started composing was that I would have too many ideas. And sometimes I would get very kind of overstimulated. And I actually ran into this well into my, a year or two into composing. So I think I would run into it a little bit early on, and then I ran into it a year or two in after that. But you just have so many ideas, you don't know which one to attack first, and you don't know where to go first, and whether you should harmonize this now or later. And what I've learned in my experience is that the best thing to do is to start with one line at a time. And what that looks like is, Are you starting with the bass line first? Are you starting with the melody first? Are you starting with the harmony first? Are you starting with, some decorative, um, some maybe you have some decorative staccato horns or something, and it's not really a theme, and it's not a harmony. It's just decorative. Um, you know, just kind of getting in the headspace of one step at a time. You know, think about a baby learning to walk. If the baby's trying to use both legs to walk at the same time, which is really just jumping, right? That it's not. It's kind of counterproductive. You can't really move efficiently, but the baby eventually crawls, right? And then they start to take one step at a time, and then feel each step they're feeling like, okay, is this balanced? Okay, this feels fine. And then they take another step, and then they balance themselves. So it's just, the music is the same way, right? Because you can write a bass line and know that you want to write the bass line. You want to start at the bass line. But when you write the bass line, it's not exactly how you heard it in your head. And so now you kind of have to change it a little bit, tweak it a little bit. And then once you get to where you wanted, then you can start with the melody. And then you can start with the harmony and do the same thing with the melody and the harmony. So it's just about taking one step at a time instead of, trying to throw everything in there all at once, because you're just going to get overstimulated, and then you might not even finish the project because you just had too many ideas and you couldn't focus. So my advice really would be is to just take one step at a time, put some ideas on hold. And sometimes what I do when I'm composing is I'll write an idea, and if I have like all these other ideas that I just can't hold in, I'll write them out, and then I'll put them later down the line in the project. I'll literally copy and paste it. Or if you're using like a DAW like Logic or Cubase, I'll write it, and then I'll click it and drag it all the way to the end of the project, so I know that it's there, and I know that when I want it and when I need it, I'll bring it back. But I can kind of just get that out and put it to the side and focus on what I'm doing right now. And that is really how I can turn out projects, turn out big projects like you guys saw with the 20-minute Spider-Man. Rescore, that's a lot of music. 20 minutes is a lot of music. I'm working on a 30-minute video right now, and it's a lot of music, it's a lot of orchestration, it's a lot of notes, and it's a lot of theme and variations with the Peter's theme and Spider-Man's theme and stuff like that. It's a lot of technique that is necessary to make things work. And so you have to focus. You have to be able to focus on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and being able to just take one step at a time when you need to. Sometimes you can take big leaps and go for things, or kind of just put an idea down and just see if it sounds good or not. I'm not telling you not to experiment. I'm telling you to be intentional. This is going to be this one lesson, being intentional, is going to be probably a motif in all of my talking shops, is to be intentional about what you're doing. You don't have to be intentional about everything. Sometimes you have to just kind of get in that creative space and get in that zone and just kind of let things happen. But when it comes to the rules and breaking the rules and things like that, there is a lot of intentionality that goes into it, that I don't know if a lot of people talk about. Like, it's a balance between being in a creative zone and then also being extremely intentional about what you're doing. So kind of going back to the point, I told you guys these are going to be tangents. Just start with one line at a time, one note at a time, one phrase at a time, just one thing at a time. Don't try to write everything at the same time, it's just overstimulating. Unless you can do that, and then if you can, then you can. But for me, it's overstimulating. It's just too much. It's too much to have to worry about at one time. And then at the same time, you're trying to figure out the emotion of the music. Well, at least when it comes to film scoring, when it comes to composition, you're trying to feel, you're trying to figure out what emotion you're going for here. When it comes to a phrase, but when it comes to film scoring and a scene, you're trying to figure out the emotion. You're trying to understand the characters, understand the scene, things like that, and it makes it just makes it even more difficult when you can't focus on what you want to write or focus your ideas once they come to you. So yeah, my advice would be to just start with one line at a time, start with one phrase at a time, and yeah. All right, next point. Write within the emotion of the scene. So, and then I put in parentheses after that. I put understand the scene. Understand the scene. So, what that means is, if there is a scene of a character crying, you don't want to write happy music. Obviously, right? Duh. And you say, Isaiah, that's obvious. That's obvious. Duh. Why? Who would do that? There's a lot of people that would do that because they don't get it, right? There's a lot of people that think that, there's a lot of people that, a lot of beginners that think that, they don't really know what they're doing. I'm probably going to cut all this out. Useless information. But, yeah, so, right within the emotion of the scene. What that means is writing in the motion of the scene, and I put that in parentheses, understand the scene. What that means is, if you have, for example, if you have a character that's crying, depending on the context, you typically wouldn't write happy music. You would write more melancholy or sad music. I think the only time you would maybe write happy music, and you'd be like, what do you mean? You wouldn't write happy music if a character's crying. You don't know. The context matters, right? If it's a horror movie and the character's crying, right? Happy music might up the horror factor and actually do service to the scene. And sad music might do disservice to the scene and actually make you feel bad versus feeling scared. If it's a horror movie, it doesn't want you to feel sad, it wants you to feel scared, right? And so happy music in that context would actually do more of a service to the scene of a character crying, because maybe like demon took their freaking, I don't know, their husband or something, and then now they're crying, and then it's about to come take them, and then it's happy music, right? And it's like, whoa, that's really creepy, versus it being sad. It's like, well, now we're taking this more seriously than we really should. We should be scared, not sad, so that, understanding the context of the scene is important, and what's happening, understanding the context of the world, understanding what's going on with the characters is extremely important for you as a film composer, because that's basically your blueprint. It's basically your blueprint for your score. And once you kind of get that, learn the basic rules, then you can start, breaking rules and things like that. For example, Hans Zimmer in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. The Pirates movies, I'll just call them that. The Pirates movies are set in I don't even know. I was going to say 18 something, but it's earlier than that. It's 16 or 15 something. I don't know. Maybe not 15. That's a little early. But it's set very, very far in the past where there were pirates, and it might be either 16 or 1700s, I think. Maybe even Nah, not the 1800s. I think 16 1700s. So if I'm not wrong, but yeah, he used an electric guitar in one of the scenes in one of those three movies. I think it was the second one. I think it was Davy Jones' Locker or something like that. He used like an electric guitar, and it worked. You know what I mean? That's a case of breaking the rules and it working. But the thing is that he knew what he was doing. You know, he experimented with that and then found that it worked, and then stuck with it. You know, because and that's the that's the thing about understanding the scene, is that those characters, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think the scene was Davy Jones wanted his heart back, and then he had kidnapped a character, and they were doing kind of like a hostage swap where Jack Sparrow had Davy Jones's heart, and then Davy Jones had the love interest, and they were doing like a kind of hostage swap on a beach, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time since I've seen those movies, but and they kind of had like this sort of standoff in the beginning of the scene, and he used an electric guitar. And it worked. You know what I mean? Even though in this world the electric guitar is like a couple centuries from being like invented or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's like, but it works because of the emotion of the scene, because of the context of the scene, and then Hans Zimmer knows the rules of film scoring. He's been doing this a long time, right? He knows the rules, and so when it came to writing that, he knew what rules he was breaking. You know what I mean? And he knew why he was breaking them. So understanding the scene, understanding the emotion of the scene, and writing within the emotion of the scene is always important when it comes to film scoring. One thing that will help you with that is reading the script, talking to the director. I think even talking to the actors as well. I think even talking to the actors can help. Being on set, things like that kind of help you get in the mind, in the headspace of the characters and of the world and what's happening and things like that. Another thing, this is very, very detailed, but writing either on cuts or past cuts. And what I mean by cuts, I mean with the editing, right? That is also something you have to think about. Because a lot of times you can write past a cut and it'll make the flowing of the scenes more naturally. It'll make it feel more natural, versus if you stop the music as soon as the scene cuts to something else, right? Usually it'll be like a fade. Like if you go to my Spider-Man video that I rescored, the music, there's a scene where in the very beginning, right? It's in the very beginning. There's a scene where let me think about this. So actually this is a great example, actually. So there's two examples of me doing this, because in that video it's like 30 seconds of, or maybe like 45 seconds of the scene, and then it cuts to another scene, and it's like another 45 seconds, and then it's another scene. So it's 3 different scenes back to back, and they're like completely different emotions, and are exploring 3 different things, right? With 4 different characters. The first scene is Peter and Harry sitting on the bench. The second scene is Craven coming to New York, and the third scene is Miles writing his college essay. And so when it comes to writing either on the cut or past the cut, it determines on if it serves the it wouldn't really serve the story, but if it makes things feel more natural or not. So in the first scene, when it transitions from Harry and Peter sitting at school, sitting on the bleachers at school, to Craven, when it transitions from that, I had the music, because the Peter and Harry scene at the end, it faded out. I had the music just fade out, and I had it fade out when it was basically black. When the screen was black, I basically had the music fade out with the screen, and then when we cut to Craven, I immediately start the music, pretty much like instantly. And then fast forward to the cut to, from Craven to Miles, I had the music go over the cut to make it feel more natural that he, because Craven's coming to New York, so this is a haunting thing. And so I had the music go over the cut to make that transition feel more natural, because we're going from a war criminal hunter guy that's that has a hit list of New York's villains and heroes, and he's basically coming to kill every hero and villain in New York just because of the love of the game. You know what I mean? And then we're going from that to a kid that's like writing his college essay and he doesn't really know what to write. It's just like two completely contrasting different things. Even though the kid is Spider-Man, or like one of them, it's the context of the scenes are very different. So you want to try to make that transition as natural as possible. And so having the music kind of overlay the cut can make that transition feel a lot smoother. And then by the time Miles is like sighing and speaking, the Craven's music is already over and his music starts to come up, and giving space is very important too. I'm starting to ramble, y'all, but space is also very, very important. That also helps with things feeling natural. So with that scene, I had the music go over the cut, and so with that scene, I had the music go over the cut, fade out by the time Miles is sighing, and by the time we can comprehend what he's doing, and he's sighing, and the reason the sigh is so important is because it has to be heard. Certain things like that need to be heard when it comes to like film scoring or video game scoring, media scoring, whatever. Certain things like that, you don't want to have music in the way of that, because that is the character, right? That's the character communicating something. You don't want to get in the way of the character communicating something. You want to enhance. The point of film scoring is to enhance the scene, and to enhance the film, not to get in the way and show off your skills or whatever. It's like, no, it's the purpose the purpose of you as a composer for this film or for this project is to enhance what's on the screen. That's it, right? Not to get in the way, not to show off how good you are, not to show off how good your technique is when it comes to writing. It's to enhance what's on the screen. So using silence is important too, and that should be a point on my list. But using silence is extremely important. Knowing when to use silence, knowing when a scene doesn't even need music, and you could just let it breathe and let it be. You know, that can make things feel more alive, um, and communicate a lot more than it would with music. So going back to silence, making that transition smoother, I composed over the cut, then I had the music fade away by the time Miles is sighing and speaking, and then only after he speaks is when I start his theme. And being kind of intentional about those things, like I said before, will be very beneficial for you. All right, I'm pacing myself this time, so I'm not gonna go to 40 minutes. So last point is writing writing with the genre in mind. This is a very important step, and it starts at the beginning of your score. Taking into consideration what genre of film you're writing for, and not even film at this point, because personally, I'm a media scorer, I guess. I don't just want to write music for movies. I also want to write music for video games, TV shows, the whole nine, right? Commercials even. I'll do commercials, right? Yeah. So writing within the genre, but I guess we're going to talk about video games and film and TV shows, right? TV shows have genres. So writing within the genre of your project is extremely important, right? Now, previously we had talked about Hans Zimmer and the Pirates and all that. That was an instance of him breaking that rule. But it worked in his favor, and it worked in the movie's favor. And so, it worked, right? No one got upset. No one would get upset. But, I think some people did actually get upset because he answered it. Maybe some people close to him thought it was a weird idea, like a weird choice or something, but because he answered it in an interview, and I feel like it was unprompted, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But yeah, this is extremely important, right? If you're writing for a Stranger Things, or if you're writing for like a Star Wars, you're gonna Star Wars and Stranger Things are two different things. So even though they're both sci-fi. So if you're writing for more like a Stranger Things, you're going to have more of like a synthesizer, type deal going on because it's in the 80s, it's in the 70s, and, it's sci-fi. You could get away with adding strings to it, here and there, which I think that they did. But, for the most part, honestly, I think strings would work in Stranger Things. Because it's sci-fi, I think it could work. I think if a composer made the choice to write Stranger Things with strings instead of, if the Duffer Brothers, not the Duffer Brothers, but Kyle Dixon, and I forgot the other composer's name, but if they decided to use strings instead of synthesizers, I think it could work because it is sci-fi, and using strings for sci-fi has been something we've been doing, society, whatever you want to call it. We've been doing that for decades now. So it's like that, I think, inherently could work. I don't think it will work as much as the synthesizers, if I'm being honest. But yeah, at the same time, you wouldn't use drums unless there's a band or something, unless there's context there, unless the kids, instead of being a D&D group, they're like a band or something, then that makes sense, right? Because it's a band. But if you're using rock band music and it's sci-fi and it's the Mind Flayer and it's all this stuff, it's that wouldn't really that wouldn't really what's the word I'm looking for? That wouldn't really translate to the audience because it wouldn't make any sense. It's like, why am I getting this random drum kit music when it has, like, there's no band on screen, there's no, the kids aren't in a band. Like, it would make more sense in, like, season 4. It makes more sense in season 4 because Eddie, they used rock music in season 4, but that's because Eddie played the guitar. That's because Eddie was in a band, I think. Not really sure, but he definitely played guitar, so it makes sense. And they only really used it for his character, for the scenes that he was in. They didn't just use it as the entire score, right? Like, when the Stranger Things title pops up, you don't hear drum music, you hear synthesizer music, or synthesizers, right? So my point is that right with the genre in mind, right? That doesn't mean you have to stick to it, but you have to have that in mind. You have to have the rules. You have to know the rules before breaking them, right? You can't break the rules. I mean, you can, but you shouldn't break the rules before you know them, because, like I said in the last episode, you risk not really making any sense, not really translating what you want to translate to the audience. And so knowing the rules and then breaking them, you know exactly what you're doing, you know exactly what you're telling the audience, and you can make something meaningful out of that. So, another example, you wouldn't have a Superman movie or a Superman media, TV show, game, whatever, and you're playing synthesizers the whole time, and he's just on Earth. Like, maybe if he was in space, right? Maybe that would work if he was in space, but if he's just on Earth, like, saving a cat out of a tree, a synthesizer wouldn't really work, right? Like, you would use more like a trumpet or a horn or something, you know what I mean? Like, if he's saving an old lady's cat out of the tree, you wouldn't use Stranger Things synthesizers. That doesn't make any sense, right? You would use maybe a horn, a solo horn or a solo trumpet to kind of show, like, oh, he's strong, he's heroic, you know what I mean? So thinking about those things are very, very important when it comes to film scoring. So this video is getting a little long, but I'm going to leave you guys with that. Just writing within the genre, or not even writing within the genre, but write with the genre in mind. Start with the genre in mind. Ask yourself, okay, what genre is this? And what kind of works with this genre? And what can, and if you don't like it, okay, what can I kind of get away with here? And so, yeah, that's going to be it for episode 5. And see you guys later.